Millionaire husband's affair, exposed after pregnant wife, follows him to a secret dinner with Mistress. A single discovery can shatter an entire world. Imagine a serene evening when you sense something is off, as though the very air trembles with hidden truths. Your heart beats faster, and every fiber of your being screams for answers. You're pregnant, your emotions already high, and uncertainty lurks in the shadows. He's late again, claiming a business dinner, yet your intuition refuses to be silenced. You decide to follow him, stomach churning, heart pounding, the life inside you reminding you what's at stake. Unbeknownst to him, you're about to unveil a secret, so dark it threatens everything you believed was real. Amelia Garcia lived in a sprawling mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Malibu. From the outside, her life seemed like the stuff of dreams. A loving husband, James Turner, who had earned his fortune through a tech startup acquisition that made headlines in Forbes, and a baby on the way that both of them had eagerly awaited. Their story was the classic modern fairy tale, an ambitious man with a brilliant mind, a devoted wife who had supported him from his struggling days, and eventually a massive windfall that propelled them into the stratosphere of the wealthy. But wealth can be a double-edged sword. Amelia often found herself alone in their luxurious home with panoramic windows offering breathtaking views. The hush of the wide hallways sometimes pressed on her chest like an invisible weight. Yes, James provided everything she could ever ask for, except his time. He was constantly at meetings, business lunches, charity galas, phone calls, and fancy dinners with potential investors. Although Amelia initially believed these to be the normal demands of a successful man's life, something in her gut began to trouble her. It wasn't always this way. In the early days, when Amelia and James were just a young couple renting a tiny apartment in downtown Los Angeles, they shared dreams, laughed together over cheap pizza, and held hands as they strolled through the city's bustling streets. Amelia had a job in marketing, while James poured every bit of his soul into building his tech enterprise. Back then, an extravagant date meant ordering takeout from their favorite hole-in-the-wall Mediterranean place. The promise of a bright future kept them afloat, and they reveled in every small victory. Amelia was his rock. She was there for him when investors rejected his pitch, comforted him when prototypes failed, and celebrated wildly when he finally got his first round of funding. After James's company, QuantumSoft, was acquired by a giant tech conglomerate, their life changed overnight. They moved to Malibu, leaving behind the cluttered little apartment. They bought a modern mansion with an infinity pool and staff. Paparazzi occasionally snapped pictures of James at high-profile events. Amelia was proud, yet she found herself feeling more like an accessory than a wife. Behind closed doors, James had become distant, more preoccupied with phone calls and forging powerful connections than sharing a meal with her. It was during this phase that Amelia realized she was pregnant. She was filled with both joy and dread. She hoped the pregnancy would bring them closer, but James seemed unenthusiastic. He offered supportive words, "That's wonderful, Amelia. It really is," yet made no tangible effort to attend doctor's appointments or discuss the future. Instead, he remained engrossed in business deals and extended travel for research. The feeling that something was amiss took root in her. It was a low hum at first, but it grew louder with every passing day. Amelia's days became a swirl of prenatal vitamins, pregnancy books, and the lonely echoes of a home too big for just one occupant most of the time. Occasionally, her old friends from downtown LA would visit, marveling at her new lifestyle. Yet Amelia's smile never quite reached her eyes. She felt like an imposter in her own home, uncertain how to navigate the world of private chefs, housekeeping staff, and social functions. She began to sense a void in her marriage, a crack in the foundation of the dream she had worked so tirelessly to build with James. One late afternoon, while she was browsing online for baby cribs, Amelia felt an overwhelming surge of loneliness and fear. She closed her laptop, exhaled shakily, and walked to the terrace to stare at the horizon. The sun was dipping into the ocean, painting the sky in orange and pink, but the beauty of the scene offered no solace. "Is this really what I wanted?" she whispered to herself. The wind didn't answer. Amelia first noticed something off when James's phone began pinging with unusual frequency. Text messages, late-night calls, muted FaceTime sessions. His phone was suddenly buzzing non-stop. He would step out of the room to take calls, speak in hushed tones, or simply ignore the phone when it rang in her presence. He also seemed to be going to more dinner meetings, returning home with a faint trace of perfume that certainly wasn't hers. She didn't want to sound like a paranoid wife, especially as her pregnancy hormones were all over the place, but the changes in James's behavior were undeniable. At first, Amelia tried to reason with herself. It must be for his upcoming project, or maybe a philanthropic endeavor. James had always been charitable. He regularly funded scholarships at his alma mater, Stanford University, which was a source of pride for Amelia. However, her instincts told her this was different. One night, James came home late, smelling of expensive cologne mixed with a scent that had a floral hint. A swirl of guilt flashed across his face the moment he saw Amelia waiting in the living room, but he quickly masked it with a smile and asked if she was feeling well. She pressed him about his day, but he offered vague responses, shrugging off her questions. That night, Amelia could barely sleep. Days turned into weeks, and her doubts began to solidify. She grew terrified of what she might discover if she pried deeper, yet the tension was eating her alive. She wanted clarity, even if it hurt. She confided in her friend Maya, a no-nonsense lawyer from downtown LA. Encouraged her to trust her instincts. Men in his position are surrounded by temptation all the time. "I'm not saying he's definitely cheating, but you need to protect yourself," Maya had warned. Amelia decided to gather proof before confronting him. She started by checking phone records on their shared telecom account, but found nothing conclusive. James had his own separate line under the company's name. Then she tried to piece together receipts he left around the house. Most were from business dinners at high-end restaurants, but one stood out, a pricey jewelry receipt from Cartier. She recalled no special occasions recently, nor had James given her any new jewelry. One evening, as she fumbled through the house's elaborate security system, she realized it also stored footage from the cameras dotted around the property. Scrolling through the archived footage, she noticed James leaving early one morning, dressed unusually sharply for his so-called casual coffee meeting. He returned nearly 3 hours later, slipping in with a kind of caution that made Amelia's heart pound. She could make out the silhouette of a woman's head in the passenger seat before the car disappeared into the garage. That snippet of evidence was all she needed to confirm her worst fear. James was hiding something, or more precisely, someone. Amelia felt a surge of nausea, partly from her pregnancy, partly from heartbreak. How could this be happening? She recalled the promises they'd made, the hard times they endured, the love that once bound them so tightly. In the midst of this emotional storm, she realized that sorrow was quickly turning to anger. She would not stand by meekly and let him continue this charade. She had supported him, sacrificed her own career to move into his high-profile world, and now he had the nerve to betray her while she carried his child. She had to catch him red-handed. That night, she decided to do something drastic. She would follow him the next time he claimed to have a dinner meeting. She didn't know if it was the pregnancy hormones fueling her courage, but she was determined to confront the truth directly. She planned meticulously, choosing a day when James mentioned a business dinner with a potential foreign investor at a 5-star restaurant. Amelia would not ask any prying questions. She would simply listen for clues, track his movements, and finally see the truth with her own eyes. The night arrived. James told Amelia he'd be attending a dinner at Sorella's, a chic Italian place renowned for its fresh truffles and exquisite wine list. He left around 7 p.m. in his slick black Tesla. Amelia, heart pounding, waited about 15 minutes before grabbing her purse, slipping into a loose-fitting dress that somewhat concealed her pregnancy, and hailing a car. She told the driver to drop her a block away from Sorella's to avoid drawing attention. She recognized a portion of her own reflection in the car window, nervous, determined, and furious, all at once. Outside the restaurant, Amelia lingered in the shadows, scanning the bustling crowd. Wealthy patrons in designer outfits arrived in their expensive vehicles, greeted by valet attendants. There, near the entrance, stood James in an impeccably tailored suit, looking more poised than he had in months. On his arm was a stunning woman with cascading brunette hair, dressed in a slinky black gown that shimmered under the overhead lights. Amelia's throat constricted at the sight. They walked inside, laughing and leaning into each other, as though they had been intimate for years. Shockwaves of betrayal coursed through Amelia. She felt the baby move inside her, as though sensing her turmoil. Fighting back tears, she steadied herself. This was the moment she had been dreading yet needed to face. After a few moments of deep breathing, she mustered her courage and entered the restaurant. The interior was dimly lit with candlelight, each table a secluded island of hushed conversations and clinking glasses. Amelia scanned the room, carefully hiding herself behind large floral arrangements or letting other patrons pass by first so she wouldn't be conspicuous. She spotted James and the woman in a corner booth, a bottle of expensive Barolo open between them. She inched closer, heart thundering. She took a seat at a table behind a decorative partition, close enough to overhear them. A fragment of their conversation reached her ears. The woman, her name was Anna, apparently was talking about a shopping trip in Beverly Hills and how James's little gift had made her day. James responded with a flirtatious smile, something Amelia had scarcely seen directed at her in months, and said, "I'm glad you like it. It looks stunning on you." A pang of recognition hit Amelia. This had to be the jewelry from Cartier. Amelia felt physically ill, but she forced herself to remain calm. Her phone in her hand, she debated recording the conversation as evidence. Before she could, James reached across the table and clasped Anna's hands in his. "I'm so glad I have you," he murmured. "It's been stressful at home. My wife is pregnant, and it's not the joyous experience I thought it would be." The words stabbed Amelia in the gut. Her breath caught in her throat. Anger threatened to consume her, but she knew she had to keep listening. James continued, "Don't get me wrong, I'm excited about the baby, but sometimes I just need an escape. Things have been tense, and it's like she's always watching me, questioning me. I can't breathe." Anna tilted her head sympathetically, playing the part of the supportive confidant. "You have me," she repeated softly, "no matter what." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes. She clenched her phone so hard her knuckles turned white. This was the moment of indisputable confirmation. He was not just having an affair. He was justifying it by painting her as some suffocating presence at home. She let out a silent sob, her mind reeling. She had built her life around him, supported him unconditionally, and now she was the burden. When James leaned in to kiss Anna, Amelia couldn't bear it anymore. She stood, her chair scraping noisily against the tiled floor, heads turned in her direction, including James's. Their eyes locked, and in that split second, Amelia witnessed the color drain from his face. Shock, horror, and guilt all flashed across his features. Anna seemed taken aback too, clearly recognizing who this might be. Amelia's pregnant figure was unmissable, even under the loose dress. The world seemed to slow down. The gentle hum of chatter and clinking glasses ceased to exist for Amelia. It was just her, James, and his mistress. She felt a primal rage she never knew she had, fueled by heartbreak and betrayal. Summoning every ounce of composure she had left, she walked right up to their table. Her voice trembled, but it was loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. "So, this is your business dinner, James?" Guests at nearby tables turned to watch the unfolding drama. James fumbled to stand, his face contorted in panic. "Amelia, this isn't what it looks like," he began. But it was exactly what it looked like, and everyone knew it. Anna's face paled as she realized the gravity of the situation. Feeling the unyielding stares of half the restaurant upon her, she quietly slid out of the booth and attempted to excuse herself. Amelia blocked her path, turned to James and demanded, "Explain right now, or we are done." But James had no coherent explanation. He managed only stammered apologies and half-baked excuses about stress, about feeling neglected, about the baby changing everything. Amelia's fury surged anew. "I gave you everything," she hissed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We worked for this life together, and you repay me by doing this? I'm carrying your child, James. How could you?" A hush fell over the patrons. Some looked mortified, others outraged on Amelia's behalf. Anna tried to escape again, but Amelia's raw grief found its voice. "Don't you dare leave now. You had no problem showing up here with my husband. Face the consequences." Anna froze, looking at James as if pleading for rescue, but he had none to offer. Amelia felt her legs shaking. She was overcome by a hot wave of dizziness. She realized she was nearly hyperventilating. One of the waiters rushed to her side, offering a glass of water and gently guiding her to a chair. The manager approached, concern etched on his face. Amelia lifted her chin, summoning the last bit of dignity she had, and addressed them all. "I apologize for this scene, but I just discovered that my husband, the father of my unborn child, is cheating on me. And it seems this dinner was quite the romantic rendezvous." A wave of empathy rippled through the onlookers. Murmurs of shock and disapproval echoed across the restaurant. James took a step toward Amelia, but she held up a trembling hand. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't you dare touch me." She could see security guards approaching from the corners of her vision, unsure how to handle the situation. But she didn't wait for them. Mustering her remaining strength, she rose to her feet, glared at James, and spoke with a voice steadier than she felt. "I'll find my own way home. Don't bother following. We're through." Amelia fled the restaurant into the cool night air. The paparazzi had a field day when they recognized James from a distance. They snapped photos, though none had the full context of the emotional explosion inside. Amelia could barely think straight, but she managed to hail a ride back to their mansion. Meanwhile, James was left to deal with the aftermath at Sorella's. Mortified, he quickly settled the bill and ushered Anna outside, where she promptly left in a separate car, not wanting to be part of the scandal any longer. James drove home, frantically calling Amelia, leaving messages she ignored. Back at the mansion, Amelia collapsed onto the plush sofa in the living room, tears streaming down her face. The quiet opulence of the surroundings only served as a grim reminder of how their success had eroded the soul of their marriage. She felt the baby move within her, a silent witness to the devastation. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls from James. At first, she let it ring. Then she answered once to unleash her fury, telling him never to call her again. In that moment, she wanted nothing more than to run far away. But where could she go? She had given up her old apartment, her old life, and much of her independence for this supposed dream. Eventually, James arrived. Amelia stood by the large windows, arms folded protectively over her belly, gazing at the dark ocean. He entered cautiously, like a trespasser in his own home, his face a mask of remorse. He tried to reach for her hand, but she recoiled, "I'm sorry, Amelia," he began, voice trembling. "I never meant for it to go this far. It was just, I felt trapped. Trapped by what?" Amelia spat, eyes blazing. Trapped by the mansion, the millions, or the child we both wanted for so long. James stammered, "It's not like that. I love you. I've been overwhelmed. We rarely talk anymore. You don't understand the pressure I'm under with these new deals." Amelia cut him off. "This isn't about business. This is about you betraying your wife. God, James, how could you? What happened to the man I supported through every failure and success?" He said nothing, guilt and regret distorting his features. Eventually, he sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I messed up," he muttered. "I thought I could handle it, that it would never come to this." Amelia let out a bitter laugh. "You thought you could juggle your pregnant wife and your mistress, and I'd never find out?" She swallowed hard, blinking away tears. "I can't do this anymore." Fear flickered in James's eyes. "What are you saying?" She took a shaky breath. "I'm saying you need to leave. I need space. I can't stand the sight of you right now." James rose and tried to protest, but Amelia refused to budge. "Go," she ordered. With a hollow expression, he slowly nodded, grabbed his car keys, and walked out the door. For the first time in their relationship, they slept under different roofs, James in a luxury hotel, Amelia alone in the big, silent house. In the following days, Amelia struggled to keep herself afloat emotionally. She confided in Maya, who came over with groceries, made sure Amelia ate properly, and offered legal advice. "You have grounds for divorce and a substantial claim," Maya said, her tone unwavering. "Don't let him manipulate you with sweet talk. You need to think about the baby's future, your future." But Amelia wasn't ready to rush to court. She needed clarity, a sense of what she truly wanted. A part of her wanted to salvage the marriage, especially for the baby's sake. Another part of her wanted to burn it all to the ground. Torn between rage and heartbreak, she found it impossible to decide immediately. James bombarded her with texts and voice messages, confessions of love, apologies, declarations that Anna meant nothing. He even had flowers delivered, but Amelia refused them at the door. A week later, something unexpected happened. Amelia sat on the terrace, sipping decaffeinated tea, trying to calm her nerves, when an unfamiliar number called her phone. It was Anna. Amelia almost hung up, but something compelled her to answer. Perhaps she wanted closure, or maybe she was just curious. She told Anna she had 10 minutes to talk, no more. Anna's voice was hesitant, trembling. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted you to know. I never intended to hurt you." Amelia snorted sarcastically, but Anna continued. "James told me your marriage was on the rocks, that you were separated, and that he felt trapped in a loveless relationship." Amelia found the statement preposterous. "I'm pregnant with his child. Hardly the definition of loveless, not to mention we were living together. Does that sound separated to you?" Anna sighed on the other end. "I was a fool. I believed him. But that night at Sorella's, I realized everything was a lie. He never told me you were still together, that you didn't even know about me, or that you were so far along in your pregnancy. He twisted the truth to make himself look like the victim." Amelia felt a fresh wave of nausea, this time from sheer disgust. Anna went on to say, James had cut off contact with her after the scandal at the restaurant, as though discarding her like a used tissue. Anna, though complicit in the affair, had also become a casualty of James's manipulations. "Look," Anna said, her voice subdued, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to let you know my side. He's not the man you think he is. He's done this before." Amelia's skin prickled. "Before? With whom?" Anna hesitated. "I only know bits and pieces. He mentioned an affair a couple years back with someone in his office, but I didn't get the details. I'm telling you so you can protect yourself. I truly am sorry. If I had known you were still very much a part of his life. I never would have gotten involved. Amelia hung up, mind spinning. James's betrayal wasn't an isolated incident. That revelation ripped open another wound. She recalled moments in the past when James had come home late, offered vague excuses, and she had believed him without question. It made her doubt every memory she once treasured. She felt a strange mixture of pity and loathing for Anna, who had also been deceived, albeit in a different way. Yet Amelia couldn't absolve her. She was still the other woman who had sat in a fancy restaurant, wearing jewelry her husband had purchased, and talked about being there for him. But the conversation clarified one thing: James was a serial betrayer. Anna was just the final straw that broke the camel's back. Eventually, James pleaded for a face-to-face discussion. Maya advised Amelia to consider the possibility of recording it or having a lawyer present. But Amelia decided to handle it alone in a public place, to avoid another dramatic scene at the house. She chose a local Starbucks in Malibu, a relatively casual environment. The irony of discussing multi-million-dollar marital problems over a simple latte wasn't lost on her, but she wanted a neutral ground without the intimidation of lawyers or the emotional triggers of home. When she arrived, James was already seated, wearing a slightly wrinkled shirt and sporting dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept. Amelia ordered a decaf latte, then sat across from him. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the hum of espresso machines in the background. "Amelia," he began softly, "I don't know how to make you believe I'm sorry. If I could turn back time—" She raised a hand to stop him. "Stop with the cliches. I want to know why. And I want to know if there's any chance this was a one-time mistake." James inhaled shakily. "I was stupid, reckless. I let the money and the success get to my head. Anna was new, exciting. I convinced myself I deserved some fun. But it was a mistake. I swear, I love you." Amelia's jaw tightened. "I spoke to Anna. She says you told her we were separated. That's not a mistake. That's a lie. Also, she implied there was someone else before her." James's face froze, guilt etched into his features. "Yes, there was a fling, but it ended quickly. I regretted it immediately. It meant nothing. Anna meant nothing. Don't you see how meaningless that sounds?" Amelia asked, exasperated. "If she meant nothing, why risk our marriage? Why risk everything we built? Am I that disposable to you?" James reached across the table, but Amelia pulled her hand away. "No, you're not disposable. I was the one being disposable with my integrity. I won't pretend I'm not at fault. I'm begging you, please, give me a chance to make this right. For our child's sake." Tears stung Amelia's eyes, but she refused to cry in front of him. "You want me to just pretend everything's okay? How will I ever trust you again, James? How do I know there isn't going to be another Anna down the line?" He sighed, defeated. "I'll do whatever it takes. Couples, counseling, therapy, a post-nuptial agreement, anything. I want to be a part of our child's life." Amelia studied him. For the first time in a while, she saw not the arrogant millionaire, but the man she had known in their small downtown apartment, vulnerable and scared. But she was no longer naive. "I need time," she said. "I'm not promising anything. I'm focusing on the baby and my well-being first." James nodded, relieved to at least have a toehold. They left Starbucks without hugging or exchanging pleasantries. Amelia felt an odd numbness. She wanted to protect her child from a shattered family, but she also couldn't ignore the deep fissure James had carved into her heart. Still, she decided to give therapy a try, if only to gain clarity about the next steps. In the weeks that followed, they attended couples counseling sessions. James came clean about his infidelities, his sense of entitlement after becoming wealthy, and his fear of fatherhood. Amelia discovered that beneath his outward confidence, James suffered from insecurities. He worried about being a good father, about losing control of his life, about becoming irrelevant in the fast-paced world of tech. None of these, however, justified cheating, and Amelia made that abundantly clear. Yet the counseling sessions seemed, for a moment, to bring them closer to understanding each other. James temporarily moved back into the guest wing of the mansion. They agreed to attend doctor's appointments together. Slowly, Amelia let him back into certain aspects of her life, if only to see how committed he truly was to changing. One day, they went to the obstetrician for a routine checkup. Hearing their baby's heartbeat on the ultrasound, James's eyes welled with tears. It was the first time Amelia saw genuine remorse, coupled with a glimmer of paternal love. "We created that," he whispered, voice trembling. "I don't want to miss out on this miracle." For a second, Amelia felt hope stirring. Perhaps there was a path forward, albeit a difficult one. But reality intruded in the form of a new business scandal. Word got out about James's affair and shareholders in a new venture. Funding started to question his judgment. The press had a field day with rumors about his personal life, leading some investors to pull out. This caused major losses, not just financially, but in terms of James's reputation. Suddenly, the man who once felt invincible was fighting to keep his empire from crumbling. Even as Amelia tried to focus on healing, she found herself bombarded with calls from journalists seeking comment. She was photographed entering and leaving the mansion. Tabloids published headlines like "Pregnant Wife Betrayed," "Tech Mogul's Secret Mistress," and "James Turner's $1 billion blunder. Did cheating cost him his fortune?" The public scandal fueled her anger, but also evoked sympathy from strangers who saw her as the wronged wife. James's troubles weren't just professional. Anna decided to sue him for emotional distress, claiming he had manipulated her with false promises of a future together. While the case was weak from a legal standpoint, the last thing James needed was more negative publicity. Amelia couldn't help but see the irony. The mistress who once whispered sweet nothings in his ear was now a source of additional torment. As if that weren't enough, rumors spread about a hush-hush settlement with the woman from the previous affair. From a couple of years ago, Amelia realized that James had likely paid that woman to remain silent. She confronted him in therapy, voice shaking with fury. James admitted it was true. He had paid a significant sum to keep her quiet, fearing it would derail his budding career. "I never wanted you to know. It was a dark moment and I regret it," he said. The revelation was a hammer blow to the fragile trust they were trying to rebuild. Amelia felt foolish for giving him a chance, for even hoping. Every new piece of information made her question how many other secrets he harbored. As James's business network began to show signs of fracture, Amelia watched from a distance, torn between resentment and pity. Sponsors withdrew from his philanthropic initiatives, citing moral and ethical concerns. Partners in new ventures demanded he step down as CEO to avoid further public relations nightmares. Even his once stalwart mentor and investor expressed dismay and stepped back. The final blow came when James tried to secure a new round of funding for an innovative biotech project he had been nurturing. The main investor, a prominent fund manager named Catherine Lee, retracted her offer, saying, "Given the current controversies, I can't risk the fund's reputation by associating with him." That was the last large-scale project in James's pipeline, a venture he had banked heavily on for future success. James found himself facing potential insolvency in a few of his entrepreneurial pursuits. Though he still had personal wealth and assets, his liquidity was threatened. The lavish mansion in Malibu, once a symbol of triumph, now became a burden as real estate agents whispered that the property was too unique to be easily sold in a market slump. Lawsuits, both frivolous and legitimate, began piling up. James was drowning in the repercussions of his own actions, and Amelia was there to witness it all. She couldn't ignore how karma seemed to be dealing him blow after blow. She had once stood by his side through adversity, but this time his downfall was of his own making. Even the staff at the mansion sensed the shift in power. Some quietly sought other employment, anticipating that the Turners' extravagant lifestyle might soon change drastically. During this time, Amelia kept her focus on her pregnancy and her emotional well-being. The counseling sessions were no longer about saving the marriage. They had become a space for Amelia to voice her anger and for James to face the harsh reality that apologies alone couldn't fix what he'd broken. Maya had already drawn up preliminary divorce papers, giving Amelia a safety net should she decide to end things for good. Late one night, Amelia woke up with severe cramps. Panicked, she rushed to the on-call doctor, who advised her to go to the emergency room. Terrified, she called James without thinking. Despite everything, he answered immediately. He raced to the hospital, arriving disheveled and breathless. Doctors examined Amelia and found she was experiencing premature contractions due to stress. They managed to stabilize her condition, warning that she must avoid intense emotional turmoil for the remainder of the pregnancy. James sat by her bedside, tears in his eyes, genuinely distraught. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, holding her hand gently. For the first time in a while, Amelia let him. She was too exhausted to resist. "You have to rest," James said, blinking back tears. "I'll stay." Something in her softened that night. She remembered the good times, the man she fell in love with before money corrupted everything. Despite her anger, a part of her still yearned for stability, for the family she had dreamed of. That night, James seemed more like the James of old, a man capable of deep affection. When the doctor released her from the hospital the next day, James helped her into the car, carefully buckling her seatbelt. She didn't protest. Over the next week, James tried to lighten her burdens. He set up a comfortable room for her in the mansion, complete with medical equipment. The doctor recommended for monitoring. He arranged a nurse to visit daily and made sure Amelia had a steady supply of nutritious meals. Though she sensed he was also seeking redemption, Amelia couldn't deny that his actions now were driven by genuine concern, not just guilt. Amelia reached 8 months pregnant with minimal complications, thanks to bed rest and a slower pace. James halted most of his business dealings to focus on her, or perhaps because he simply had no choice. His empire was in tatters. Still, in these quiet weeks, they forged a tenuous truce. They rarely spoke about the affair, or the mistress, or the chaos swirling around James's finances. Their conversations focused on the baby, choosing names, discussing parenting philosophies, reading birthing plans. Then the day arrived sooner than expected. Amelia went into labor in the early morning hours. James, who had taken to sleeping in the guest room for Curtis' sake, rushed in at the sound of her pained call. They hurried to the hospital, where Amelia endured a grueling labor. James held her hand, whispering encouragement. Hours later, a baby boy came into the world, screaming his arrival. Amelia wept with relief and overwhelming love as the nurse placed the baby in her arms. James stood by, tears streaming down his cheeks. For a moment, the heartbreak, betrayal, and scandal dissolved. All that mattered was this tiny life they had created together. "He's beautiful," James murmured, gently touching the baby's cheek. The hospital stay was a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and postpartum checkups. James showed up for every feeding, every swaddle, every lullaby. He seemed determined to be the father Amelia had once hoped he would be, and for a short time she let herself be comforted by his presence. Yet the reality of their damaged marriage hung over them like a storm cloud. They had a child together, but they had yet to address the deep, festering wound between them. A few weeks after they brought baby Oliver home, Amelia made a decision. She had watched James's attempts at redemption, his deepening bond with the baby, and his willingness to at least try counseling. Still, she couldn't erase the betrayals or the scars they left. James had proven he was unfaithful more than once, and while she didn't want to keep him from his son, she couldn't blindly trust him as her husband. One evening, after putting Oliver to sleep, Amelia found James in the living room, browsing through old photos of the two of them on his phone. He glanced up, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "Remember that day at Venice Beach?" he asked softly, showing her a photo from their early dating days. They were younger, smiling, carefree. Amelia felt her heart clench. "I do," she replied. "I also remember all the times you came home late with lipstick on your shirt, or lied about dinner meetings, or told your mistress I was suffocating you." James looked away. "I know. I don't expect you to forget, but I'm trying to make amends." Amelia breathed in deeply. "I appreciate that you're being a good father, but as for me, as for us, I can't see a path forward where I'm truly at peace. I'll never know if I can trust you when you leave the house for a business meeting." Tears welled up, but she blinked them away. "I'm filing for divorce." Pain flashed across James's face. He nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting this. "If that's what you want, I won't fight you. I'll sign whatever you need. But please, let me be part of Oliver's life." Amelia's heart ached, but she stood firm. "I won't deny you that. Oliver deserves a father. We can work out a custody arrangement. But as for our marriage, it's over." Though it was a crushing moment for them both, a strange sense of relief settled over Amelia. She realized she had been holding her breath for months, years perhaps. Finally, she was taking control of her destiny and refusing to let James's transgressions dictate her self-worth. The divorce proceedings moved faster than one might expect for such a high-profile couple. James, battered by public scandal and financial woes, chose not to contest most of Amelia's demands. He agreed to a hefty settlement, child support, and an amicable co-parenting arrangement. Amelia, for her part, didn't seek to fleece him, only to secure Oliver's future. She wanted to raise her son without feeling beholden to James's money. When the divorce was finalized, the story made its rounds in tabloids again, though the public's interest had waned compared to the original scandal. James's downfall was old news by then. New scandals in Hollywood had taken center stage. Still, his reputation remained tarnished, and investors kept their distance. Some rumored that he had burned through most of his liquid assets, settling lawsuits and propping up failing businesses. The once mighty tech titan found himself on the fringes of an industry that had moved on to new luminaries. For Amelia, the end of the marriage marked a new beginning. She moved to a comfortable house closer to downtown LA, wanting a simpler life and to reconnect with friends who had known her before wealth overshadowed everything. She resumed part-time freelance work in marketing, planning to return full-time when Oliver was a bit older. James, by contrast, retreated into obscurity. He sold the Malibu mansion at a loss just to liquidate assets. Rumor had it he moved into a high-rise apartment in Santa Monica, smaller and more modest than the palatial estate. He once boasted he saw Oliver regularly, abiding by the custody agreement. He appeared genuinely devoted to his son, and for that Amelia was grateful. Yet each time he handed Oliver back to her, she saw the weight of regret etched on his face. She had no doubt that he still loved her in some twisted way, but love alone couldn't fix the damage he had wrought. In the months following the divorce, Amelia discovered her resilience. She found unexpected happiness in the small, everyday joys, reading bedtime stories to Oliver, cooking her own meals and watching sunsets from her modest backyard rather than a towering cliffside mansion. She reunited with old friends, including Maya, whose unwavering support had been a lifeline. She also attended therapy alone, determined to heal and not let bitterness define her. Slowly she emerged stronger, more self-assured. She even launched a small boutique marketing firm, leveraging the high-end contacts she had made during her marriage. Clients appreciated her professionalism and grounded perspective, and her business began to flourish. Meanwhile, James's fortunes continued to decline. Several of his startups declared bankruptcy. Partners cut ties, citing a lack of confidence in leadership. It was whispered that he was attempting to start over, pitching smaller-scale tech solutions, but found no takers. He was mired in legal proceedings with Anna, who was relentless in her pursuit of damages, even if her claims were tenuous. On top of that, the hush money scandal from his older affair resurfaced, adding another legal and financial burden. One day, James showed up at Amelia's new home unannounced. She found him on her porch, looking worn and defeated. He'd come to drop off Oliver after his scheduled visitation, but it was an hour earlier than planned. Oliver was asleep in the car seat, blissfully unaware of the tension in the air. James looked at Amelia with hollow eyes. "I lost the last investor today. The biotech project is done. I don't even know how I'll meet payroll for my skeleton staff. I might have to let them go." He paused, swallowing hard. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry again, for everything. And you look happy." Amelia nodded, not unkindly. "I am. And I'm sorry you're going through this, truly. But there's nothing I can do." He offered a sad, wistful smile. "I know. This is all on me. I just hope someday you can forgive me, if not for me, then for yourself." He picked up Oliver and handed him to Amelia carefully. "Take care of our son." As James left, Amelia felt an odd mix of pity and relief. She had spent so long in pain and anger that she forgot what it felt like to let go. Watching him walk away, a shadow of the man he once was, she recognized the power of karma. He had sown betrayal and dishonesty, and life had a way of reaping its own justice. Amelia's marketing firm thrived, and she soon found herself able to afford a comfortable lifestyle without extravagance. She didn't aspire to reclaim the glitz of Malibu mansions or super yachts. She valued independence and integrity more than opulence. Oliver grew, a happy child who spent weekends with his father but always returned to Amelia with giggles and stories about the games they played. One afternoon Maya visited, bringing homemade cookies for Oliver. They sipped tea in the living room, watching Oliver stack blocks on the floor. "You know," Maya said, "you've come a long way from that night at the restaurant." Amelia nodded, recalling how her world shattered in that moment. "I never imagined I'd be happier after losing what I thought was everything." Maya grinned. "Sometimes we have to lose the illusions to find real peace." Amelia gazed fondly at Oliver. "I guess so. I just want to raise him to value loyalty, kindness, and honesty, qualities that can't be bought." Maya reached out and touched Amelia's hand. "You're doing great, Mum." They both laughed softly as Oliver clapped his hands, knocking down his tower of blocks. As the years passed, Amelia found love again cautiously at first. She dated a colleague who admired her strength and devotion to her child. He was patient, understanding of her trust issues, and willing to build a foundation of respect. By the time Oliver was 5, Amelia was living a fulfilled life. She had a growing business, a supportive partner, and a sense of personal autonomy she'd never known. She had fully severed herself from the shadow of James's infamy. Their interactions were civil, limited mostly to co-parenting logistics. She rarely heard about his life, though she gathered from acquaintances that he lived quietly, having lost most of his fortune. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Amelia would reflect on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the heartbreak, the betrayal, the humiliation at Sorella's, and the surge of righteous fury that spurred her to take back her life. She felt gratitude for having found the strength to stand on her own and compassion for the naive young woman she once was. And though she would never condone what James did, she recognized that people are shaped by their choices and that sometimes your choices can destroy the best parts of your life. But from the ashes, one could also rise if willing to confront the truth and accept the consequences. Amelia had done just that. She hoped James would find his own path to redemption, if not for himself, then for Oliver, who deserved a father capable of growth. But whether or not James ever truly changed was no longer her responsibility. She had her own life to live, one grounded in the values she hoped to pass on to her son: honesty, resilience, and above all, self-respect. In the end, Amelia's journey teaches us a powerful lesson about self-worth and the strength it takes to walk away from betrayal, even when the stakes are high. She discovered that no amount of money can mend a broken trust, and that true happiness lies in personal integrity and emotional freedom. From the flashy facade of Malibu mansions to the warm laughter of real friendships, she learned that dignity comes first. If this story resonated with you, if it made your heart race, your eyes tear up, or your spirit spark with hope, consider showing your support. Share it with friends who might be facing similar struggles. Leave a comment with your thoughts and hit the subscribe button to stay connected. By doing so, you help this channel continue to bring powerful, transformative stories straight to you. Join this growing community and let's keep the conversation alive.